Hello everybody, and welcome to Live in My Bathrobe. Tonight, I wanted to talk about the Constitution. What, did you need something?
Alexa, set a timer for 38 minutes. Oh, she didn't hear me.
Alexa, set a timer for 38 minutes.
38 minutes, starting now.
Hey, it's a live show, folks. It's a live show, so, what are you going to do, right? Things happen. I have a family. I live with a family. I love my family, and if they need something, they come first. In any case, the Constitution. Oh, I'm not prepared for this. My prep was going to be reading the Constitution through again. I've read it several times, but oh man, my memory's bad. It's been a while since I read the whole thing. But I'm going to give you an overview. I know Mark, or Andy actually, he goes by Andy Tilley. His profile says Mark Andy Tilley, so I always think Mark, He wanted something on the Constitution, and I'll go more in depth on it sometime. I think it's a good thing to do. But here's a little history of the Constitution, okay? The Revolution, the American Revolution was full of idealists, okay? And if you read the Declaration of Independence, we're going to start with the Declaration of Independence. I don't have it memorized, but I can tell you this much, okay? Everybody wants to focus on, all the Republicans, all the original intent people want to focus on a document that's not binding by law. I mean, it's not law. It's not the law of the land. But the Declaration of Independence was about the ideals of the Founding Fathers, who were by no means perfect. Several were slave owners. Several were, one was tried for treason and hung. There were charlatans. But there were some good people. There were some educated people. But they were what they were. They were product of their times. Their times had a slave trade, okay? They also, the ones that became president later, gave orders that killed indigenous tribes. So we can't forget that bloody history, okay? But let's talk about what the American Revolution represented. It represented a rejection of anointed monarchs. Monarchs anointed by religion, typically, and it rejected that tyranny for rule of law. It was about rule of law. The important part of the Declaration, the most important part of the Declaration of Independence, to me, is the blasphemy against Romans 13. Romans 13 is about the divine right of kings and how governments are instituted among men by God. And you should obey the monarchs because that's who was appointed by God. Well, guess what? Declaration of Independence flies directly in the face of that. The Declaration of Independence says, oh gosh, I'm not speaking properly tonight. Sorry about that. The Declaration of Independence says in part that governments are instituted by the consent of the governed. Governments are instituted by men by the consent of the governed. I don't know the exact quote because I'm not reading it right now. I'm sorry, but that is in the Declaration of Independence. That idea, okay. So it starts from there. But what kind of government it's going to be? Because before that, rule of law hadn't been done for a long time. At least in Western society. In Western society, it was all ruled by religiously appointed monarch. And what the Revolution did was it established rule of law in Western society for the first time in a very long time, in almost 2,000 years. So, Greeks had a democracy at one point, and there were the Romans had a republic before they had an empire. That's true. Magna Carta was a start. That established, can't forget the Magna Carta. Magna Carta paved the way, okay? But rule of law without an anointed monarch, without inherited title, was a new idea in Western society. I mean, Magna Carta still had that monarch, but he became a figurehead, right? But it was still an appointed. Titles were still inheritable, and titles still meant you were in the House of Lords, or you were in royalty, right? Still had nobles and everything. Well, we didn't have that. No titles in the United States. Well, the Articles of Confederation, the mistakes made in the Articles of Confederation were that states were basically little countries. They were printing their own money. Their commerce laws were all different. It was difficult to do trade. And it was difficult to travel from one state to another. And that's a very short list of the mistakes the Articles of Confederation made. It was supposed to be about strong state government, not strong federal government. Then they were having all these problems, so the Constitutional Convention came around. Oh, Trevor, I appreciate you bringing up Magna Carta. That is absolutely something that if I had actually prepared for this, that would have been something great to bring up. I might have missed it, actually. So I really do appreciate you bringing that up, because that is something that paved the way for what we have, okay? But it's something, getting rid of royalty and nobles was a new idea, but it's all about rule of law. It's all about rule of law and not inheriting your power. Although inherited wealth is inherited power, but that's another story for another day. The Constitution is mostly about interstate commerce and centralizing money and centralizing the government. And most of the Constitution up to the amendments is that. It's setting up the government and setting up commerce and how it was going to work in the states, setting up who was going to build roads and whose responsibility that was. That is most of what the Constitution is about. The Bill of Rights was an afterthought. It was a strong afterthought, and the Constitution would have never been ratified without the first 10 amendments. But the Constitution was mostly about commerce and setting up that government, setting up that central government. The amendments, there were already amendments. There was already a mechanism to make amendments. Okay. So you get the First Amendment, and this is what Trump right now is attacking. And it's not just the NFL players kneeling. Yes, that's an attack on the First Amendment. Okay, he wants to upstage them. He wants them to not do it. He wants to create rules against them. He keeps urging the NFL to do that. Yes, he's attacking people's First Amendment rights there, but he's also heavily attacking the press, and he's been doing it from the beginning. This isn't new. It isn't new that he wants to talk about NBC's license being taken away. They don't have a license. This is something local affiliates have. But NBC, he wants to take NBC's right to say what they want away. He wants to take the press's right to say what they want away. He wants to control that. Well, he was trying to do that from the beginning. He just called CNN fake news. He called the press the enemy of the American people. The enemy of the American people. And at the same time, he's listening to and trusting InfoWars and Breitbart and all that. So he's attacking the First Amendment on those grounds. He's mingling church and state, which is against the First Amendment. He's just the right to assemble. There's all kinds of protest laws coming up in the various states, and that's something that he attacked in his rallies. So he doesn't care about the First Amendment at all. Then the Second Amendment, oh boy. A lot of people will tell you, including some friends of mine, that the Second Amendment is about protecting individual liberties from the tyranny of the government. Well, Francine, yeah, the Articles of Confederation didn't work, so they made the Constitution, and they added the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was important. There were a lot of, illegal search and seizure is in there. The no quartering soldiers is in there. Your right not to incriminate yourself, the right to free speech, the right to free to exercise of religion or to opt out, because if you can't opt out, it's not freedom. And that's why opting out of expressions of patriotism is so important. That's something we need to protect, because if we don't have the freedom to do that, we don't have the freedom of speech. As far as keeping and bearing arms, people kept and bore arms back then because they were in wild country. I mean, they could have been attacked by foreign invaders and ships, and no one would have known for days, maybe weeks. Okay? There was no one to give orders instantaneously. They didn't have telephones and internet and all that. They didn't even have telegraphs set up yet. They had no way of communicating instantly. So if they got invaded, they needed a ready and able militia. And where were they going to get the militia? From the local people. Okay? So people had their guns and people were ready to be part of the militia so they could defend their territory. Okay? And that's what the Second Amendment was about. It wasn't about overthrowing the government ever. The ability to overthrow the government is built into the Constitution. It's built into the Constitution. So, the broad masses of the population are more amenable to the appeal of rhetoric than any other force. You know what, Trevor? Absolutely. Obviously, Hitler used that propaganda, and Goebbels said that the more you repeat something, the more true it is. You repeat something often enough, it becomes the truth. That is something that they definitely live by. And Jay, you were talking about a well-regulated militia is what it was supposed to be limited to. Well, that's the first half of the Second Amendment. It's a well-regulated militia. I can't speak again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right to bear arms will not be infringed. Yes, that was the security of the state, of the country. Second Amendment was in place of standing army. Yes, and slave insurrection. That's true. That was another reason why it was there. And people take it as, I'm going to have my personal arsenal so I can help overthrow the government if it gets too tyrannical. Well, damn it, those people who believe that, with few exceptions, there's a few exceptions, but with few exceptions, the people who believe that nonsense are people I'd never want in charge, and we'd have to overthrow them after they overthrew the government. You know, exactly. It's not a bunch of goons with AR-15s at home. Trevor said that. Trevor, you're right. It's ridiculous. Now, the people that I know, I mean, I have people in my life who have AR-15s. I have a cousin who has an AR-15, and the reason he has an AR-15, his words, because there's going to be a civil war between white and black people, and I want to be ready for it. That was the last time I spoke to my cousin, except at my grandmother's funeral. I spoke to him briefly there. I didn't speak to him on any kind of... I just said hi, basically, you know, because it was a funeral. But that whole thing with the AR-15, I'm like, oh, come on, man. No, that's racist and that's bullshit. There's not going to be a civil war between white and black people. And that's the thing, you know, it was... Weapons weren't... There's nothing in the Second Amendment that says you're allowed to keep any damn arms you want. A well-regulated militia, well-regulated. Well-regulated means laws are supposed to be able to be passed to regulate what kind of arms you have, you know, how you're supposed to use them. They can regulate your ammunition. You know, there's nothing in the Second Amendment that says that you have the right to keep and bear any arms you want. Now, it didn't just include guns. Arms could be swords, arms could be spears, arms could be whatever, you know. But it was all about a regulated militia to keep the security of the country intact, the state being the country, not your personal arsenal to protect your own. I mean, obviously it's to protect your land too, but, you know, the Founding Fathers were worried that there was no way to repel foreign invaders without people being at the ready. And unless they had a standing army everywhere. If they had a standing militia that was supported by taxes everywhere, then, you know, maybe they could have gone without that law, that amendment. That's not what they wanted to do. So, if you ever study history, you heard about the Minutemen. There were militias all over the place that were called Minutemen, and they could be ready in less than a minute, and they'd have their weapons at the ready to protect what they had. So, yeah, it's, yeah, no police, no 911. I mean, sure, there were, in bigger cities, you had your constables and stuff, but you had your police, but not out in the wilderness, not in rural towns. You know, you didn't have the taxes for the police force, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But there was a law about quartering soldiers. You can't be forced to quarter soldiers. You can't have your property searched and seized without warrant. You had a right to a fair trial by a jury of your peers. It's, you know, these are things that really should have been in the Constitution. It should have been set up, but they weren't, and they were added to the Bill of Rights, and they are important. But the Second Amendment is so sacred to some people, and they ignore the first half of it. Every single time they ignore the first half of it. When you bring it up, you're uninformed, you're stupid, oh man, I've been called every name there is over the Second Amendment and bringing up the first half of it. They just ignore the first half. A well-regulated militia. Well, if you're supposed to be able to keep your arms, no matter what they are, then it's not well regulated. Yeah, fire departments were volunteer, and you're right, independent contractors. The things we have today, they just didn't have then. And we're talking about a constitution written at a time when there was no internet, there were no cars, there was no mass transit, there was no, and the weapons, somebody passed a meme on that there was a machine gun, but it wasn't really a machine gun, it was a manual repeater. It was, you had to crank it. There was a 9-shot revolver, that's semi-automatic there. And then, I might be terming it wrong because it's technically something else. But yeah, it's amazing that they think that it shouldn't be regulated at all. I personally think that ammunition, every mass shooting that I've seen so far, the shooter had tons and tons of ammunition. I think when somebody starts buying up ammunition should be registered. You should have to sign out ammunition like you sign out Sudafed. Okay? You should have to sign it out. And there's not a limit. You can do it, but if you go above a certain number of bullets, then you're investigated. Quietly. And they find out there should be a dossier on you. Are you using it for target shooting? Are you using it because you go hunting a lot? Are you using it at a gun range? And if you're not, then they need to keep an eye on your ass. Because either you are a doomsday prepper who's a little nutty, or you're going to shoot somebody. And I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable gun restriction. But what I proposed was a study. Because we need to get all the facts. And I'm speculating. That might not even solve the problem. I don't want to speculate. I want the facts. But people feel so threatened by a study. So the Constitution. There's so many attacks on the Constitution all the time here. Republicans attack the Constitution in terms of religion all the time. They're always wanting to put up religious displays. They're always wanting to give religious exemptions to laws. They're always wanting to do all this stuff that mingles church and state. We have an Office of Faith-Based Initiatives that's been there since the Bush administration. It shouldn't even exist. You have Office of Faith-Based Initiatives in states, too. Michigan had one when I was there. I don't know if Pennsylvania has one. I have to look that up. I have actually been lax on learning about Pennsylvania's government. I started reading the Constitution the other day because someone tried to ask me, well, what does Article 2 mean to you in the Pennsylvania Constitution in relation to firearms? You know what's in Article 2 of Pennsylvania's Constitution? The legislation, the legislators. It's all about rules on age of legislators and how they're elected and when they're elected and blah, blah, blah. Has nothing to do with firearms. Firearms are mentioned in Article 1, Section 21. And this guy's like, what does Article 2 mean to you? It means you don't know your own state's constitution and you've been here longer than I have. And you're trying to use it as an argument. You make this claim and your claim doesn't even back up what you said. But, in any case, I don't know. You're not going to taking the guns away from a lot of Pennsylvania. There's tons of hunters here, Muskets and Bowie knives, yeah. I don't know. See, if there are muskets, there's no damn way Mandalay Bay shooting would have happened. Yeah, that's right, Francine. There's no one who needs a military-style weapon. There's no one who needs that stock that he had that made it shoot like an automatic. I don't know. I think he should have been on some kind of watch list. I think every gun should be registered. I think when you have tons of guns and tons of ammo, they should know what the hell you're up to. All right, Francine, thanks for joining. And thank you for everybody who's joined so far. Trevor's contributed. Jay's contributed. And I appreciate you staying here, whether you listen and lurk or whether you contribute. It really does help me. It gets this thing over faster, the exercise over faster, and I get to talk about things. I wasn't really prepared for this one. I really want to go in depth in the Constitution. I really want to go through article by article. I'm going to have to read it again and really, really go deep because there's a lot there. We can get into prohibition and the repeal of prohibition, a lesson that we did not learn from history. Prohibition, as everybody knows, alcohol was prohibited. Then there were speakeasies. Organized crime ended up getting rich. and they branched out into other organized crime, and then it had to be shut down, and then we learned that lesson, and we repealed prohibition, but then the drug war started. And we have drug prohibition, especially marijuana prohibition. Marijuana is relatively harmless, but we have a prohibition against it, and it's ridiculous. Let's see. Here in Nevada, our state constitution does not allow for gun registration or licensing. They actually forced Clark County Metro PD to destroy all of the blue cards. Yeah, you told me that before, Jay. We talked about that. It wasn't on here or one of these videos. And the thing is laws like that just make it more difficult to stop mass shootings. And it's something that the federal government's going to have to crack down on. They're going to have to do something. And there's going to be states that balk about it, and there's going to be a lot of people that balk about it. No one's trying to take away your guns, okay? What we're trying to do is stop people from killing a ton of people all at once, from firing into a crowd of 22,000 like shooting fish in a barrel. He lived in Clark County where he didn't have to register his gun, didn't have to have any licenses. I mean, what do you do about a thing like that? And that's why these things need to be studied. It seems to me a no-brainer. The guy had a bunch of guns. He had a bunch of ammo. All he did was gamble all the time. He didn't go out to ranges and shoot as far as he might have. I don't know. I don't know that for sure. I don't want to speculate too much. But, you know, no one really knew anything about him, but he was a retired accountant who went out gambling all the time. And no one was with him when he was in Vegas gambling. Okay, so what was he doing? Was he scouting places to, you know, to do his mass shooting? We don't know his agenda. We don't know his motives. And we need to know those things about people. I actually had a ballot initiative by referendum last year that would have closed the gun show loophole. It got challenged in the state Supreme Court and deemed unenforceable. Oh, Jay. Man, oh, man. I mean, it's just harder and harder with these courts the way they are and with the legislators the way they are to get any control on this situation. And it's just going to keep getting worse until we do something about it. What are you going to do? I could talk about guns. I could talk about a little bit more about the Constitution if you want. I want to maybe move on to another subject because I got in an argument tonight and I want to let you know about it. Now, I was a consultant for 9 years, okay? I consulted to every type of business, from people who made teddy bears on up to multinational corporations like General Motors, okay? My customers now typically do $15 million in shipping and upwards, up to $130 million in shipping. I'm not actually sure what Walmart does, but they do a ton in shipping, okay? But they're our biggest customer, and we have Stryker Medical, I have all these customers, Neiman Marcus, Bonton. You name a household name, we probably have them as a customer, okay? But I consulted with every type of business when I was out in the field, so I learned a lot about business, because you don't just learn about the information flow. I was an IT professional, I was an IT consultant, I was an integration consultant. You don't just learn about databases, and you don't just learn about computers, and you don't just learn about information flow through a business. You learn about the business, and you learn what successful people do in business. You learn how businesses that fail work. And I could tell if a business was going to fail or if a business was going to succeed, because they had certain qualities that were in common. And in any case, I was talking about birth control on Governor Tom Wolf's post about birth control and how he wants to make sure that birth control is part of the insurance in the state. And I was talking to somebody who pretended to be an employer. Her name was Kimberly. Well, Kimberly, turns out, is a blogger, a speaker, and a writer. She is not an employer. If she employs anybody, it might be one or two people, but she is not a business owner. She is a blogger, she is a speaker, and she is an author. Okay? And she was pretending to be a business owner who employed people, and she was trying to tell me that 401k and pension and insurance are gifts that you give to your employees. And no, that's bullshit. It's a compensation package. There's a reason why you put your benefits in an ad for a job posting. If you put your benefits in a job posting, you're going to attract employees who are good and are competitive And you're going to attract more employees that are valuable to your company than if you don't have those benefits. And the people you're going to attract when you don't have benefits are people who just need a job as a stepping stone to get a job with benefits. Because people need those benefits as they get older. Their health starts failing. They need insurance, okay? So that's a compensation package. She kept insisting it was a gift. It was like she's some philanthropist or benefactor. But no, that's not the case. It's not a gift. It is a compensation package. And if you aren't a valuable employee, you're not going to get that compensation package because you're not going to have a job. When you give people a job, you give them measurable objectives, and you measure those objectives and make sure they meet them. And if they don't meet them, well, then you either coach them or you get rid of them. Okay? That's how it works in business. And they don't want to get rid of you because turnover is really expensive. So if you have value as an employee, they want to compensate you because they want to keep you and they want you to meet your objectives, so they find every which way to do it. I know people that probably should have been let go a long time ago, except that turnover is bad and it's expensive, and keeping them around, you can coach them and then they end up becoming average employees. Maybe you end up finding a position where they excel and they become exceptional employees. And that's what the business I'm in does. They try to find a position for you if you're not a good fit in one place. Hell, they'll even help you find another job. I mean, they don't go looking for it for you, but they'll give you recommendations and they'll help you prepare. I had a coworker, the job wasn't a good fit for him. This was after I was a consultant. I started supporting consultants on a level where I helped them with their development and I helped them with their questions with consultation and things like that. And this coworker, it wasn't a good fit for him. He wasn't very technical, but he was a good project manager. And he found a project management job, and my manager helped him get the job. My manager gave him an excellent recommendation. There's no hard feelings. They want you to succeed in life, and if you're not succeeding in that position, they want you to succeed somewhere else. That's how an employer should act. Okay? These small business employers, and I wanted to talk about these small business employers. Man, I met a lot of good small business owners, and I have small business owners on my friends list, okay? But I have a lot of small business owners in my life that were great, okay? They were super. They ran their business well. They ran it like a well-oiled machine, and they were friendly, and they treated it like family, and they were really good. I mean, you don't really have to treat your employees like family, but you do have to treat them professionally, at least, okay? Then I had other employers, I had other employers who would just take money that wasn't part of their profits and losses just to buy presents for their nephew. And you can't do that. You can't just take that out as a loss because that's not part of doing business. You should be taking your compensation for the work you do for your business, and that is what you should spend. You don't just go spending it out of the income of the business. That's ridiculous. Yes, you own the business, but if you do that, you're going to take a hit. Because I knew this guy who just did it indiscriminately, and he didn't take it into account in his costs. Ended up costing him in labor and goods, and his overhead ended up being more of a percentage because he kept doing stuff like that. And he didn't treat his employees well, and he would make promises he wouldn't keep, and he was running in the red for a long time. And somehow he got in the black. He ended up getting a couple good employees that ended up running the business for him, basically. But this person pretended to be an employer so that she could argue with me about birth control and how insurance is a gift, and if they can't afford birth control, or they can't, if they want birth control, they should be paying for it for themselves. If they want tubal ligation and hysterectomies, they should be paying for it themselves. She said, I did. Yeah, well, you know what? If you did, more power to you, but most people can't afford that shit.
That was probably a lie.
It was probably a lie, yeah. She said, my wife, Jeannie just said, that was probably a lie. Most of what she said was probably lies because she didn't know shit about business that I knew right off the bat. And I finally looked her up on LinkedIn and I found her. I found her.
Insurance paid for my tubal, and it was almost $6,000.
Insurance paid for Jeannie's tubal ligation. It was almost $6,000. Ain't nobody, not too many people are going to afford that on their own, okay? Well, Jay, she did sound like a libertarian. Very much so. And she was one of the libertarians who were against birth control, Most of the people are religious zealots who don't want women to have sex. And here's the thing. I don't care if women have more sex because they have birth control. But it's the non sequitur. Women get birth control for all kinds of reasons. But I think planning your pregnancy is a good damn reason. If you want to have sex and you don't want to have kids and you use birth control, great. Because you know what's more expensive? A baby. And I'm not just talking about personally expensive. I'm talking about it's expensive to insurance. Insurance covers birth. Insurance covers prenatal care. Insurance covers ultrasounds. Insurance covers babies' wellness visits. Insurance covers sickness and injury. And Jeannie has something to say.
There will be fewer abortions.
Well, there you go. She said there will be fewer abortions if you have birth control. And considering that they consider abortion murder, they should be all for birth control, but they're not. And Catholics, the Catholic Church is still against birth control, so you got a lot of Catholics out there lobbying against it. And it's sincere religious convictions on the part of an employer should not make healthcare decisions for their employees. That's bullshit. I don't want to adhere to my employer's religion, although my employer is a publicly traded Fortune 50. They're in the top somewhere. They're not just a Fortune 500 company. They're like in the Fortune 100 or 50 or something like that. But my employer has officers and board members and all that. So getting any one person's religion to adhere to would be crazy. They're adhering to all kinds of religion or no religion at all. I have a lot of non-religious people in my company. And it's a multinational corporation with 400,000 employees. So, you know, a little hard to enforce. But then you get somebody like Hobby Lobby. They're like, oh, you've got to adhere to I'm not going to give you birth control as part of compensation because I don't want you to have promiscuous sex. Fuck you, dude. Who the hell are you? But let's just look at this from a business economic standpoint. Insurance is a investment in your employees. You want your employees to go to wellness visits so they catch things early and it doesn't cost you more down the road, like for catastrophic illness, like cancer and things like that. You want to catch that stuff early and get rid of it because you're going to end up losing an employee. And as I said before, turnover is expensive. You pay for turnover. So if you have insurance and your employees can go to the doctor on a regular basis, you're going to have healthier employees, you're going to have happier employees, more productive employees. Instead of employees taking sick days when they get really, really super sick because they can't afford to lose their wages, you know, you should have sick days too because they can go and see a doctor, or you give them some time to go see a doctor. My employer, if I have a doctor's appointment, I can take a couple hours out of my day and I can go see the doctor. And they want me to do that. They encourage me to do that because they don't want me to be sicker. They don't want me to have more days off work and go on short-term disability and stuff. And that's what happens. It is an investment. It is not a fucking gift. This person pretending to be an employer told me it's a gift. It's not a fucking gift. You're stupid. You don't know anything about business. You don't know a fucking thing about business. Stop fucking being a fraud. Everybody who knows anything about business knows you're fucking full of shit, Kimberly. And that's not Kimberly Mitchell, by the way. That's a friend of mine, and no, I'm not talking about her. I think it's Kimberly Adsit. Kim Adsit. And she runs a blog called Kindergals, and she's an author of like 5 books about kindergarten. She's a retired kindergarten teacher, and she goes around the country speaking with other retired kindergarten teachers about teaching kindergartners. That is what she does. She's not a fucking employer and doesn't know fucking shit about fucking business. Fucking fuck. There's a lot of fucks in this video. I've given several fucks. So in any case, it drives me nuts when I'm sitting here, and I don't try to brag about my expertise on business. I know a shit ton about business. I know about supply chain. I know about shipping. I know about information flow. I know about HR because I've done hiring and firing. I know about P&Ls because I've been a manager. I've done all kinds of shit in business, and I know a lot about business. I know how they operate. Okay? I know about infrastructure. I know how valuable it is. And I know about labor. And I know about sales. I've been a salesperson. I know about all this stuff. And so when you start bullshitting about business, I fucking know it. I don't like bragging about what I know about business because I can't prove that on a Facebook post, on the governor's post. Okay? I can give you my credentials, but you don't have to give a shit. I could be lying. But oh man, does it drive me goddamn crazy. Because I know about business and she doesn't know shit. And she's trying to make it look like she's on equal footing. She's not on equal footing. And I finally I looked her up on LinkedIn, and I blocked her on LinkedIn so she couldn't look me up, but she can probably see this video if she ever bothers to look for it. And here's the thing, okay? I found her on LinkedIn. I found out what she did. It's not hard to Google you when you have a business. If you're a business owner, you'll come up. It's easy to find you, and it's easy to know what your business does. It's also easy to know how many employees your business has. She was a fraud. Don't try to tell me you know about business when you don't have a business. Your business is you. When your tax, when the way you do your taxes is DBA, when your business name is DBA Kindergals, but you're really just the business. You are the person who is the business. You are not a fucking employer. Stop it. Fucking gift. 401k is a gift, pension's a gift, and insurance is a gift. Bullshit. It's a compensation package. And if you take that compensation package away, guess what? Your employees are probably going to go elsewhere because other people have those benefits. Although that was kind of dying while Bush was in office. I remember a lot of companies rolling their pensions over, their employee pensions, into compensation packages for their executives. And that's unconscionable. But you're more competitive as an employer, and you're going to get better employees if you offer that compensation, okay? And this lady, oh man, this lady drove me nuts. Well, I can't say I was pretty calm when I was talking to her, but the more I think about it, it's like, well, it got a lot of fucks out of me. I know a lot about business. I wish I had the capital to start a business. I would be successful if I had capital. I don't have capital, but I will have capital someday. And that day may come 5 years down the road, but it's going to happen. And I think I'm going to end up helping my stepson start a business because he's going to culinary school. He wants to open up a bakery. I won't get too much into it. But it's a pretty neat idea, pretty novel idea. And I'll probably end up helping him with it. But it's probably going to be 5 years, 10 years down the road. I got time. You know, I don't know if it's going to come out of my own money, which my own income is about to go up, basically due to rearrangements in deductions and other things, and debts paid off and things like that, and refinancing and all that. I'm going to end up having more money. So I may have the capital on my own. I may get the capital from another source. And that's inevitable too. So I'll be able to help him start a business, and I know about business, so I know how to make it successful. But when I'm dealing with a fraud, all about birth control. Birth control, just purely from an economic standpoint, from a business standpoint, you want to offer birth control so that people don't have unplanned pregnancies, because unplanned pregnancies means no productivity. It means maternity leave that's mandatory. It means that you're paying more in your premiums because you're going to end up paying for, you're going to be paying for the kids' health and well-being. And if you think that it's worth it to withhold birth control so you end up paying more later, birth control, I listed the maladies birth control is used for, and not the least of which is cancer. Ovarian cysts and endometrial cancer, I think that's what it's called. And Alexa, stop. And it helps with PMDD, and it helps with heavy periods that can lead to anemia, and it helps with all kinds of maladies that are more catastrophic than paying for the birth control. And it's ridiculous that people end up saying, oh, I have a sincere religious conviction, so you can't have it. Well, you are not very good at economics, and you should probably get out of business. You know what it was? You know why I'm so upset and that she was a fraud and she was trying to pretend to be a business person? Because I know failed business owners. And you know what the number one complaint they have is? There are some business owners they didn't know how to run the business and they ran it into the ground, okay? But the majority of them say, well, the government took my business away because I couldn't pay the taxes. Taxes are a part of doing business. They should be on your profit and loss statements. And if they're not, you should get the hell out of business and go work for someone who doesn't. You should go work for someone who knows what they're doing. So what I'm trying to say, you should go to work for someone who knows what they're doing. If you don't know that taxes are part of your goddamn profit and loss statements, they are a loss on your they're a part of they're a business expense. And you need to include that in your business expenses. And if you don't, you're bad. You are bad at business. Go away. Get an accountant at least. There are accountants for that. You should employ an accountant. If you can't afford to employ an accountant and you don't know how to do it yourself, get the hell out of business and work for someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. Fuck. I hate that complaint. It's almost always a libertarian. I always question whether they're actually business owners, but I met actual business owners that failed because they said, oh, the taxes took my business down. Yes, because you didn't include them in your P&Ls, you idiot. You didn't include them because you don't want to pay them. You thought you were going to get away with it. Guess what? You aren't going to get away with it. It's not theft, man. It's your price. When you have a business, you end up causing more expense for the taxpayer than you realize. When you have to keep up a supply chain, you have to keep trucks on the road. Trucks eat up the road. The road has to be repaired because trucks are on it all the damn time, tearing it up with their 80,000-pound loads and stuff. You are causing taxpayer expense. You need to be paying into taxes. The bigger business you are, the more you're doing. Okay, the more you're doing to our infrastructure. Our infrastructure keeps your business going. It keeps your supply chain flowing. And if you don't want to pay taxes, then your business is going to die. Eventually, if enough of businesses don't want to pay taxes, they don't want to get, you want employees to pay for everything. You want employees to pay for training. You will require college degrees, and you don't want employees to be paid for that. You don't want employees to be compensated for that. Now, my employer gives tuition reimbursement, and there are a lot of employers that do, but they give it to you after you're already employed. They want you to have a degree. My employer wanted me to have an MIS degree when I started. I didn't have one, but that was back when nobody had one in IT, in the 90s. Nobody had MIS and CIS degrees. And if you'd have learned that back then anyway, everything you knew was obsolete in 5 years. So what the hell did it matter? There were 19-year-olds getting in and doing what I was doing when I was 26, and it's because you didn't really need a degree back then. Okay, but yeah, these employers they want college degrees, and they don't want to pay the taxes to make tuition affordable for people. And millennials are going in and they're getting in all kinds of debt, and then you get all these articles. Why are millennials killing Applebee's? Why are millennials killing diamonds? Because they can't afford them, you fucking idiot. They can't afford them because you're not paying them and you're not compensating them for their student loans. They get in massive debt because they're told they need a college degree to get this job, and this job market is lucrative, and this job market is, it needs people. There's a shortage of people, there's a shortage of engineers, all this stuff. There's a shortage of nurses, there's a shortage of this, shortage of that. Well, guess what? Those markets end up getting flooded because everybody thinks that they're not, and then you can't get a job. But who paid for your tuition? Loans. Loans paid for your tuition, and now you're in debt for a long, long fucking time. Employers should be paying. Any employer who says, I need a degree, should be paying a tax to make tuition affordable or free. Period. And I want that legislation proposed. And if that doesn't get proposed by the time I run in 2020, I'm proposing it myself when I get into Congress. I hope I get into Congress. I gotta lose a lot of weight. I don't want my weight to be an issue. I saw what Chris Christie went through. Chris Christie deserves everything he gets, except he's getting a bunch of fat jokes, and what he really is a corrupt asshole. No one points out the corruption, but they point out his weight. I don't want my weight to be an issue, so I'm getting rid of it. I'm going to be losing 2 pounds a week for the next 2 years, and in 2019, I'll be ready to run for the 2020 election. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to campaign hard, and I'm going to win. And I'm going to introduce this stuff, but it doesn't get introduced before then. Believe me, I'm writing my representatives. I'm letting them know how I feel, but Pat Toomey don't give a shit. Keith Rospus don't give a shit. Tom Wolf does. I want to say Petrarca does, and I want to say that Bob Casey does, but Bob Casey is a little bit of a moderate. Wolf is really, left-wing, and he's progressive, and I really like him. But then you got these people, I don't know. That's what I'm going to be proposing that. I'm also going to be proposing that they get taxed for infrastructure because businesses are the ones who need it the most. A lot of us can work from home now. I don't go anywhere. I don't really use the roads as much as I used to, but you know who uses the roads all the time? My employer does. Businesses do because they have semi-trailers on the road all the time. They're tearing up the roads. So who should be paying for the roads? Congress should levy that tax against businesses because businesses use the roads more than anybody else. You can't go out on the road without semis being there, right? That's who should be paying for the infrastructure, not the average person. Or at least they should be paying the lion's share of it. So, it looks like Mark Andy Tilley joined a little late. I talked about the Constitution for the first 20 minutes. I didn't do a lot of prep work for the Constitution. And I need to. I need to go back and read it and do something on every article and go back through my research because I actually wrote a book on a guy named David Barton who's a historical revisionist and wants to talk about the original intent of the Founding Fathers. So I did a ton of research on the Constitution and how it came to be and the writings of the Founding Fathers and who they were and all this other stuff. And I also read the Federalist Papers during that time and all kinds of stuff. So I have all kinds of research notes and I really need to go back through that and prep for what I need to talk about in the Constitution. But I did give an overview of some of it, a really brief overview. It's 20 minutes. It's not exactly a history lesson. But I talked about the Second Amendment a bit. I probably talked about the Second Amendment for 10 minutes of that. And then we went on to employers and business because I got into an argument with somebody who was a fraud who said that she was an employer and turned out to be a blogger, an author, and a speaker and not an employer. So I've been going off on that and going off on my philosophy of who should be paying taxes for what. And hell, I think there should be a tax on guns and ammo, but I think that'll get squashed because they'll say the right to bear arms cannot be infringed, and a tax will be an infringement. But regulated militia, there should be regulation. There might not be able to be taxed, but you can still have free licenses. You can still have free registration, and you should register those guns, and you should register that ammo. And I've forgotten how to English tonight, just in case you're wondering. I'm pretty good at saying fuck, though. In any case, you should be registering all that ammo. If somebody has a bunch of guns and a bunch of ammo, and they're not target shooters, they're not hobbyists, they're not collectors, you need to be looking at them. So I talked about that. I don't know about a tax. An insurance policy, I don't think you could really do that either with the Second Amendment. It'd be nice if we could change the Second Amendment, but that would take a constitutional convention or it would take 3/4 of the state legislatures. You'd have to get a lot of backing for that. So there's that too. I don't know. Let me see. Other taxes. I definitely think the road should be paid for by business more than anybody else. Hey, Justin. Good of you to join. I saw Justin join, Dan, Jason. I saw quite a few people, and I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you staying if you're staying. And I also appreciate your interaction. So if you interact, Trevor threw in some things earlier. Jay threw in some things earlier. And Francine did, and I appreciate that tremendously. My friends are great, and I appreciate you listening to me ramble. I am 48 minutes in, and I don't know what to talk about at the moment. I was talking about business. I talked about the Constitution. What else can I talk about? I guess I could talk about, well, I don't know that I want to talk about the women's suffrage movement right now. That obviously was one of the amendments, the right of women to vote. Women went through a lot to get that right to vote. They had rocks thrown at them. They were called whores. They were called sluts. They were called all kinds of nasty names. They had crowds that threatened to kill them. They were held in jail and force-fed when they tried to have a hunger strike. All kinds of nastiness. And you can watch, there's a movie called Iron-Jawed Angels that goes over some of this. There's plenty of books on it. But the women's suffrage, I mean, it's amazing that adult women were basically ruled up until 1920. The money it would take to do universal health care. Justin, I'll have to get some actual numbers because I've done the math on this before. Let me tell you something about universal health care. If the only reform we did was we took the money that people pay into private insurance companies right now, and we take those premiums and we put them into Medicare for all, not only would we save 17%, it used to be higher, because back when I did the math, insurance companies were doing 25 to 35% administrative costs. Medicare only has 3% tops in administration costs. So if we would save 17% because Obamacare actually capped that at 20%, administrative costs of 20% for private insurance. So if we end up, paying our premiums into Medicare for all, we would end up being able to insure 86 million more Americans, and we only had to insure like 46 million more. So what can we do with the rest of that money? We could either save it, we can give lower copays or no copays, we can provide better health care, and that's the only reform. Go into single payer, go into Medicare for all. And what you could do is you could take the employees that are part of the private insurance companies right now, and you could just absorb them into the Medicare system and then figure it out from there. That way all those people don't lose their jobs right off the bat. They get phased out, or they get, or they get kept. Maybe they're needed, They already know the system, or they already know how healthcare works, and they might be good at it, this kind of thing. But some things might be redundant, and some things might not be needed anymore, and so you have a 5-year phase-out program where they can be educated to do other things, or they can find other jobs, and they can be given a severance package, that kind of thing. So I think that's where that goes. The executives already have golden parachutes, so don't worry about them. Don't cry over them. They have huge golden parachutes, okay? So don't worry about the officers. Don't worry about the executives. They're taken care of. They're fine. Plus, they have tons of stock. So anyway, so they make dividend checks off your sweat and effort for doing nothing but putting money in. That's what stock is. I mean, it's good for retirement stuff and it's good for capital, but there are people who just take their inheritance money, put it into stocks, and they make dividend checks at a lower tax rate than the rest of us pay for our income. So that's some bullshit right there. But in any case, as far as that's all we need to do is go to single payer and pay the premiums we do today. Now, other reforms. One, pharmaceuticals come in-house. They end up coming into the NIH or CDC or both, and they're manufactured by government workers. And they are researched by government workers, and no more capitalism in the pharmaceutical industry. Because pharmaceutical industry, capitalism is really produced designer drugs that don't really do much, like Nexium, for example. Scientific American had a great article on this. All the pharmaceutical companies had to do during the Bush administration was pay the FDA's $400,000 fee to approve a drug, and the FDA would pretty much rubber stamp it. That's how Vias got through. See, that's the thing. Australia has universal health care. Canada has universal health care. England has universal health care. All these industrialized countries have universal health care. And some of the countries do it better than others. And what we could do is model our programs after those countries. Because we pay a hell of a lot more. We pay more for worse results. And let me tell you one of the reasons we get worse results here. One, we have copays, and people can't afford the copays when they get catastrophic illness. Two, you will go to the doctor, and the doctor will prescribe labs. Doctor, I went over this in a previous video, but they'll prescribe radiology, they'll prescribe blood work, and they'll prescribe something else. And you go to get all these labs in 3 different places, and guess what? All 3 are out of network. And all 3 end up screwing up the paperwork, so guess what? It's not under the same diagnosis code anymore. And that's how healthcare operates. If your PCP, if your primary care physician gives you a diagnosis code, all the paperwork should be done under that diagnosis. And once it's done that way, you end up paying in-network costs no matter where he sent you. For most insurance companies, and that isn't necessarily true of all. But trying to stay in network is a pain in the ass. And the medical billing mistakes get made all the time. Justin, you're right. Well, wait a minute. 1.38 billion. No, that's way too low. We pay $2 trillion in premiums right now. Somewhere around there. I think it was $2.35 trillion in premiums to insurance company, private insurers. We could put $2.3 trillion into Medicare right now, and it would be solvent, and we would save money, and we would insure more people. But I think hospitals should be run by counties, by states, whatever, but they shouldn't be run by churches, they shouldn't be run by private interests. We should not have, well, yeah, that's possible. Bernie's plan might have been 1.3 trillion. I don't know, but when I did the math, he may have had more reforms in his plan. I don't remember his whole plan. It's very possible because he takes a lot of things into account. He's very good at economics. It's possible that it's 1.38 trillion on his plan. I wouldn't be too shocked because he may have put other reforms, because he was talking about pharmaceutical, like Medicare being able to buy bulk drugs for less and that kind of thing, have buying power that was taken away from them during the Bush administration put back, that kind of stuff. But I think for-profit healthcare is legalized extortion. You go into a private company to get your healthcare done, or you die. You don't have a choice in the matter. So you either suffer and die with cancer, or you go through cancer treatment with a private insurer, a private doctor, and a private hospital with administrators and dividend checks going to people. People make dividend checks off your sickness and your injury, your terminal illnesses. My dad's pancreatic cancer paid someone's dividend check. My Aunt Pam's breast cancer paid someone's dividend check. My Uncle Mike's cancer paid someone's dividend check. All the stuff I went through for my back paid someone's dividend check. That's horseshit. People shouldn't be making dividend checks off of your sickness and injury, and they just shouldn't. So yeah, Justin, that's the whole thing. Negotiating medicine prices was he ended up going to the private sector. He was and becoming a lobbyist for the pharmaceutical companies or for the insurers. I can't remember which, but yeah, I think for the pharmaceutical companies because that would make sense. But yeah, legalized extortion. Private healthcare is legalized extortion, and we let it go on. And that is why I didn't like Hillary Clinton's plan that ended up becoming the Affordable Care Act. Obama didn't have a public option. He backed down from it. I love the public option. That's why I voted for Obama over Hillary Clinton in 2008, because he wanted the public option in healthcare. Hillary Clinton wanted private insurance to get all the money. Well, private insurance is part of the problem, but we need a whole bunch of reforms in the healthcare system. Oh, I would imagine so. See, Australia, you got to negotiate low prices because everything there is going to kill you. All the wildlife wants to kill you. The snakes, the spiders, the little tiny jellyfish. It all wants to, even the koala bears. Koalas want to kill you. Well, chlamydia, they do. They look cute, but they want to kill you. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I don't know really that much. We hear about the wildlife there, but so many people are surviving in Australia that I can't hardly believe you deal with it on a daily basis. You probably shake your shoes and get rid of the spiders, but yeah, some rich asshole is sitting on a yacht off of the backs of sick people, Justin says. Yes, that's exactly right. And you know who else is sitting in those yachts? Let me tell you. Because privatization is an evil thing. Privatization of services we all need, things that should belong to the commons, is a terrible thing. Private prisons. There is stock in private prisons. People are getting rich off of people being incarcerated, 2/3 of whom are in there for victimless, nonviolent crimes. Nixon actually got with Kaiser Permanente, and Nixon is the one who privatized like county hospitals and things like that. He was the one, because there used to be government-run hospitals and stuff. But he ended up getting with Kaiser Permanente, and that all changed. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, pharmacy benefits. You can afford medicine here if you have insurance. I mean, most of my co-pays are like $5 and things like that. So, but if you don't have insurance, you're screwed. Or if you have shitty insurance, you're screwed. I mean, my Aunt Pam died because she didn't. I said her death paid somebody's dividend check, but the truth of the matter is, with my Aunt Pam in particular, I have other people in my life that died of cancer that had insurance, and people got rich off of their illness and their death. Okay, their palliative care was also covered under insurance. So someone, a private insurer, an investor in a private insurer in their stock, made a dividend check off of my dad dying and my grandmother dying and all these other people dying in my life because we have private insurance. We have legalized extortion. So, my Aunt Pam, before the Affordable Care Act, she got breast cancer. She got it detected, I think at Planned Parenthood, as a matter of fact. Not entirely sure, but she had a mammogram, and they found a lump. She knew about the lump, but she couldn't afford to get it treated. So, she tried to work with it. She was hoping it would go away. And it built, and it built, and it built. The cancer was throughout her body, and she ended up going to the hospital just in time to die 3 days before her death is when she went into the hospital, and it got so bad. And that care cost money, and no one ended up paying it. You know who paid it? Everybody who went to the hospital after her, because they have to absorb those costs somewhere. They have to make up for those costs. That's how their costs go up, because they have to take the losses. But we absolutely need to get rid of privatized healthcare, private insurance. We need to get rid of private school transportation and private trash pickup and all that. We need those services. Services we need should belong to the commons. They shouldn't be privatized. Nobody should make... You know who makes money off of your school transportation? If you have children and they ride the bus to school, chances are, in a lot of states, they are riding a bus that is owned by a private transportation company. My daughter does. They've been doing private transportation in Pennsylvania for a lot longer than they were in Michigan. When I was in Michigan when they went private in Southfield, okay, just north of Detroit, half a mile from 8 Mile Road. So... they went private up there, and I looked into it, and the private company was owned by a British company, and the stockholders were American, Canadian, and British. So who's making money off your school transportation, off your tax dollars? They replaced people who were making a living wage, who lived in your community and spent money in your community and kept your community's economy going a little bit better, with people who were not compensated well, didn't have benefits. Half the time they were hired back at a lower rate because they were bus drivers, they were experienced, they knew the routes, and that was the only job they could get right away. But someone in England, someone in Canada, someone in the United States that's not in your community makes stock off your kids riding the bus to school. That's shit. What the fuck? Trash pickup. There are private companies. Waste Management has publicly traded. All these places that do trash pickup, there's big companies that do trash pickup that are publicly traded. People are making stock money, dividend checks off of your trash pickup, which is a service you need and used to be provided by your fucking city. Your community used to do that. And people let it happen because they didn't go to their city council meetings. They didn't get involved. They didn't know these things were going on. Lobbyists came into the city council and they talked to your city council members and they made it sound like the best fucking thing in the world. It's going to save your city money, blah, blah, blah. And then these politicians said, oh, I saved you money because we went with this contract and we're not doing this anymore. And people, really anti-union people, there's a lot of anti-union sentiment out there. They talk bad about unions and unions this, unions that. We're going to save all this money by going to this private contractor. You're giving your money away to rich people. You're giving... I hope the audio isn't terrible when I yell. You're giving your money away to wealthy people who don't deserve your money. They don't live in your community. They're not going to spend money in your community, and they're just going to put it away in the Cayman fucking Islands. They're not going to invest it back in you. They're not going to invest it... The whole trickle-down theory. They are not going to give you... They're not going to create new jobs. Let me tell you something. Even a trickle-down theory... Here's what trickle-down theory wouldn't work, even if business people were completely and totally benevolent. My company has a bunch of people that, they're looking to buy other companies. The CEO is looking to buy other companies, things like that. And they bought a lot of companies. We have 400,000 employees now. They bought a few companies in the last couple of years. They bought TNT, they bought Genco, they bought a few other companies. There's been a lot of acquisitions. I can tell you all the acquisitions of the years. I don't really want to... I have watched Jimmy Dore, and I got to say, Justin, here's the thing about Jimmy Dore. He'll sound right. He sounds right a lot of the time, but he pissed me off with one thing, and it's hard to listen to him. Okay? He said, don't vote for Hillary Clinton, go vote for Donald Trump, and teach the DNC a lesson. Fuck that shit. Now we got this incompetent fucking monster who's fucking shit up because people like that had that attitude. I didn't like Hillary Clinton either, but I'm not going to sit there and fucking say that she's the same as Trump or she's worse than Trump. He was right about a lot of the things he said about her, but you know what? You take one corrupt person or you take a completely fucking malevolent person. It was the lesser of two evils, and we should have taken the lesser of two evils. And, well, Jay, the Young Turks had that attitude to a point, but here's the thing about the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur said, vote for Hillary Clinton, because Donald Trump is a monster. I can't remember those exact words, but I do remember the show where he said, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton, and here's why. Jimmy Dore, almost to the end, not at the end he changed his mind, but up until the end, almost, he was saying, don't vote for Hillary Clinton, teach the DNC a lesson. The only solace I can take in this is that Trump has been extremely ineffective with legislation. He hasn't got a piece of major legislation passed at all. But what he did in the executive branch, he's got a racist in charge of civil rights offices in the Attorney General's office. He has an anti-environmentalist and a global warming denier as the head of the EPA. He has a science denier that he wants in charge of NASA. He has somebody that is against public education as the Secretary of Education. He has the power to fuck things up, even if he doesn't pass all that legislation. And Jimmy Dore, yes, Jimmy Dore, he can make a lot of good points. He's pretty good at it, but he was dead wrong on that one. And a lot of people got convinced by that. And a lot of people stayed home, and a lot of people, didn't vote for Clinton. They're like, let's teach the DNC a lesson. No. You do damage control. Hillary Clinton was damage control. I kept trying to tell people this. But who listens to me? I don't have a popular YouTube show. The most views I've had on any of my videos is 5 on YouTube. A lot of people view it on here. But after I put it on YouTube, it doesn't really get anywhere. And I'm going to have to build an audience. And I can't expect. I'm not owed views. I'm not entitled to them. I have to market myself somehow. But I get what Jimmy Dore's saying. I get what you're saying, Justin. But the practicality of the matter was we had to do damage control and then keep the movement going. Take the corruption out. Change the party. Get more progressives in 2018. It was too late by the time Jimmy Dore was saying shit to make things better. And if you can't make things better, you do the damage control and then you make things better. And that's what the frustration I have with that is that people stop doing activism as soon as they vote for the lesser of two evils and then they let it go. Well, that's the problem. So I don't know. Trump could win again. And you know why Trump could win again? Because the media has a ratings bias. They still have a ratings bias. They still hang on every outrageous thing he says. And they gave him more attention in the last election. And I honestly think that's how he won. Because he got more attention than any other candidate. He got, I think, twice the attention of Clinton. And he got 10 times the coverage of any other candidate or all the other candidates combined. It's free advertising. And I think he could win again. As shitty as he is. Because people will stay home. People are like, oh, well, if they run Hillary Clinton again, they're stupid. Okay? They're fucking stupid if they run Hillary again. I got a lot of people who say, oh, Hillary, she won the popular vote and she's more qualified. I don't care. She's got too much baggage and she couldn't beat the least popular GOP candidate in my lifetime. How the fuck does that happen? How do you not beat a racist, misogynist, xenophobic asshole with policy positions that are fantasy? How do you get beat by him? It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, okay, Russian hacking, blah blah blah, but it shouldn't even been close. The Russian hacking shouldn't have had as big of an impact as it did. Third party votes. The third party candidates got less in this election than they have in past elections, and you would think they'd get more because more people registered to vote in this election than any other election. 200 million people were registered to vote this election. And the last election, I think it was 118 million or something like that. It was a very stark contrast. But the Republicans got out the vote, and they didn't win the popular vote, but they won the electoral vote. And it shouldn't even been close. She shouldn't have had 26%. She should have had fucking 70% of the popular vote. That's what's ridiculous to me. There's 46.9% of the people that stayed home. I don't know. Jimmy Dore, I'm sorry. I went off on this because Jimmy Dore, man. I like listening to some of the stuff he says, and he's right about the corruption and things like that, exposing the corruption. But as hard as it was to swallow it, as hard as it was to swallow it, I held my nose, and I voted for Hillary Clinton because damage control. Because no way I can let that monster fucking Trump into office. Okay? She wasn't as bad as everybody said. She just wasn't. If you look at her congressional record, you can go and look at her voting record. It wasn't that bad. And Jimmy Dore stressed a couple things like the bankruptcy bill and pharmaceutical companies. She voted with pharmaceutical companies. She didn't talk about her environmental record. She didn't talk about her science record. Didn't talk about DOMA, which she didn't vote for, even though she said personally she thinks marriage is one man, one woman. She did not impose that on LGBT community because she didn't think DOMA was right. I don't like her. I don't. I don't. But she was definitely damage control. I don't know. Bernie, people are saying Bernie is the most popular politician. I think a lot of people are going to think he's too old to run. I don't know. I think that the DNC will still be against him, and the DNC will still work against him. I just don't think that's going to happen. If he runs as an independent, he might have a chance, but I don't think he's going to have a chance as a Democrat, because the DNC will not let him win. The Democrats see him as an outsider. I hear it from hardline Democrats. They think he's an outsider. They don't think he's a real Democrat. They don't think he should be running in the party. I don't agree with them, but I think we need fresh blood. I think we need somebody progressive who's a stark contrast to Trump. People were talking about Tulsi Gabbard, was it? Oh gosh, that's terrible. I'm bad with names. Think Tulsi Gabbard or Tulsi Gabbard or whatever. Tulsi Gabbard, right? I like her platform, except she's anti-GMO. Oh gosh. She doesn't have a clear grasp on science, and that scares me a bit. Elizabeth Warren, sharp as a tack. I'd love to see her run. I absolutely love to see her run. I think I want to say Jesse Walker said something about Cory Booker. But yeah, I've liked Elizabeth Warren since the first time I saw her on a talk show talking about economics. She's smart. She's progressive. I'd love to see her run, and I'd love to see her win. I don't know who's going to run. I don't know who's going to run against Trump. I think anybody who's halfway decent, who doesn't have a shitload of baggage that people can pick on, like Hillary Clinton did. Hillary Clinton had a lot of problems with it. Hillary Clinton had a bunch of imagined baggage, conspiracy theories that people, believed. She wasn't popular with independents. And the GOP had an acid hate for her. Just an acid hate. And I think someone like Elizabeth Warren could have done a lot better. I think she could have won. I think Joe Biden could win, but I think he's way too old to run. I do think Bernie Sanders is too old to run at this point. I think we do need to get somebody along the lines of Barack Obama, who's a little younger, who is an inspirational speaker, charismatic speaker, who has good policy positions, and is smart to run against Trump. And who isn't afraid, somebody who's not going to back down from him. I don't think Elizabeth Warren would back down from him. So, I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. I don't know what's going to happen in 2020. All I know is that I'm going to run myself in 2020 for whatever office I can get into. Whatever office I think I can do. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm exercising. I'm talking to people. I'm gaining a following, hopefully. Hopefully I'm not sounding like a broken record because I repeated stuff. Yeah, that's true, Francine. She had baggage from when her husband was in office, too. And part of that baggage was the whole... Because you saw people calling her Killary, Killary, Killary. The reason why they called her Killary is because of a guy who just made shit up out of whole cloth about Bill and Hillary Clinton murdering their political opponents and murdering people they didn't like. What do I think of the Justice Democrats? I think the Justice Democrats are a great idea. I signed up for the Justice Democrats. I think the Justice Democrats are the way to go. I think that's the direction of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party needs to go with the will of the people. And that's the thing that Bernie did. Bernie was going with the statistics. Most of the people want universal health care. Most of the people want taxing of the rich. Most people want infrastructure investment. Most people wanted the things that Bernie was for. And that's what the Justice Democrats are about. They're going with the will of the people. What does Congress do right now? They go with the will of the lobbyists. And that's why 70% of the bills go against what the people want. Congress is supposed to represent us, and they don't. And that's a problem. So, yeah, I think Justice Democrats are great. I hope that more Justice Democrats end up winning. I hope that that's the direction of the Democratic Party and the establishment Democrats go. I think they're getting too steeped in high-dollar donors. And I think that they can run a successful campaign with the lower-dollar donors. But we need to get someone in there who goes with the will of the people. Now, mob rule can be bad, but when it comes to stuff like healthcare, I mean, it just... I like democratic socialism. I prefer democratic socialism. Well, real democracy, yeah, people do want that, but right now we have a representative republic, so to get a real democracy in there, you know, one person, one vote, and we get to vote on everything, and then Congress isn't in our way anymore. But, you know, you can start with your local communities. Make your local communities democracies. Everybody gets a vote on every issue. So that way, things aren't a secret. Your city council doesn't end up voting on things like privatization of public transportation, privatization of school transportation, where someone makes a dividend check off of your kid riding to the bus. They don't get to vote on that because the people get to vote on that. So you can dispense with the city council and you can have certain offices that handle certain administrative tasks, but one person, one vote on each issue. Yeah, I agree with that. I think democratic socialism is a really good form of government. People don't understand what democratic socialism is, so let me explain it. I think most of my friends do. A lot of my friends are Bernie supporters in the primaries at the very least. And a lot of them understand what democratic socialism is. Democratic socialism is the idea that the people get to vote on what belongs to the commons. So if the people think that the internet should be a utility, the internet should be a utility and should be regulated like a utility. If people think that public schools are a thing we want, then that should be. We have some socialism already. We have police departments and fire departments and things like that. We have services that belong to the commons, and we need that stuff to belong to the commons. The water supply, fuel even could belong to the commons. Things that belong to the commons would be in the hands of the people, and the people would vote to say this is what belongs to us. There'd still be some capitalism, but it'd be really well regulated. And if capitalism is to survive, there absolutely must be regulation. Because capitalism always seeks to exploit the worker. Always. And, let's see. We can't vote on everything, get representative, republic, but it's not majority versus not. Yeah, the majority voice is never heard, and that is a problem. I agree. I think that is a huge problem, and that's why Congress votes 70% of the time against us. That's ridiculous. We were founded on the idea of no taxation without representation. That was the big complaint of the colonists. It was being debated in Parliament, British Parliament, but the colonists got sick of it, and they said, no, we can't get representation. We don't want you to govern us anymore. Well, what's happening now? We get taxed. We don't have representation. Our representation doesn't represent us. And that's why I'm coming back to the idea that Congress should be done by like jury duty selection, that kind of thing. I think, well, let's just take the elections away from it. Because then we get representatives that are picked from the people and not by special interests, not by people who own the politicians, not by the Koch brothers, not by George Soros, if you believe every conspiracy theorist who thinks that George Soros funds every election on the Democratic side. I think that we should pick Congress like jury duty. We get the money out of politics, all that campaigning that people do, that money goes away. I do think the president should be broken up into multiple jobs and everybody should be elected to those positions. And I think it should be a direct election. Yes, Francine, that is true. Capitalism is exploiting public services for capital gain, and it's ridiculous. Tax dollars being spent, or tax dollars paying dividend checks is wrong. That is welfare for the rich people. And I'm going to run on that platform. Privatization needs to go. Privatization of public services, that is going to be one big key part of my platform. You are paying rich people for services you need. You're paying rich people for tax pickup, or trash tax pickup. Trash pickup. You're paying rich people to take your kids to school. You are paying rich people. The workers that do those jobs should be getting the money, not some person you've never met who isn't part of your community and isn't going to spend money on your community. and isn't going to provide you any better jobs. They took away the jobs that were good, that were paying a living wage, and they gave them to people that are only making like $9, $10 an hour. And that the thing that infuriates me so much is I made more than that in 1998, and people are still getting paid that. The minimum wage hasn't gone up in a long time, or it hasn't gone up appreciably. It definitely hasn't gone up with the cost of living. And so, $9 looks good because it's above minimum wage. It's not good. I was making more than that in 1998 in an entry-level position. And that you didn't need a lot of skill to have. So, I gained skill and I did pretty well at it, but, anybody could come in and off the street and done that job if they knew something about computers. Justin, I live in Pennsylvania right now. And the minimum wage is $7.25 here. But I don't know what the jobs are like. I know the job outlook for me. If I want to go out and get another job right now, I can go out and get another job. Because I have experience. I have skill. I have 19 years experience as an IT professional. There are tons of companies that will hire me. I get headhunters all the time. But people going out in entry level, I know people that go to work at Chipotle make like $10.50 an hour right off the bat. But that's still less than I made in 1998. That was in Ohio. I lived in Akron, Ohio, and I made $11 an hour as a temp. Then I made $12.50 an hour when I got hired in. Then I made $15 an hour 6 months later. And it just went up from there. I got a 46% raise, I think, when I went up to Michigan. Yeah, see, that's the thing, Francine. I agree with that completely. I think that we should have somebody who's an expert in each one of the cabinet positions, who's an expert negotiator, who knows about the military. There should be somebody elected to each one of those positions, each one of those presidential roles. I don't think we should get into a cult of personality that basically decides the tide of the election. I think that people need to get behind each of those offices and evaluate them for their skill in that office instead of saying, "Oh, this president, this one person can't do all those jobs," and Trump was definitely not capable of doing those jobs. A guy who was in real estate. What the hell does he know about all the positions? What does he know about the military? Nothing. He claims that going to military school for discipline because he was a delinquent. He claims that military school is just like the military, and it's not. He went there because he was an asshole. He didn't go there to get discipline, to learn a skill and learn a trade and fight a war. He went there because he was a juvenile delinquent who needed that kind of disciplinary action. So yeah, I agree. I think that it shouldn't just be one person at all. And you know what that'll do? That'll give women more opportunity in politics, because it won't just be, of course, we'll never have a first woman president then, but that it would make history anyway, because there'd be a first chief negotiator that's a woman, and I don't know. I think it's high time a woman is in that office. Women have been the majority of voters since 1966, and that's a big complicated issue. I talked about that, but yeah, I think it should be broken up. I agree. Well, we're at 83 minutes. I've been doing this for 83 minutes. Boy, can I ramble, but I do sound like a broken record on some issues. Seems like they keep coming up because they're tying into other things I'm talking about. And I hope you appreciate this as much as I appreciate you being here for it and interacting with me and asking questions and offering stuff that I can talk about. And, it really makes this go fast. And I really appreciate you sharing your time with me, because I know your time's valuable, and spending it listening to me, wow, I do feel honored that you're sitting here listening to me. Any ideas that you have about things I can talk about in the future, please let me know. I know that Mark Andy Tilley, who I believe goes by Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, would appreciate me talking about the Constitution more in depth and talking about history in depth. Trump is an idiot, was thinking he was sly, and now just dumb luck on some things. Yes. What we heard tonight on the news, he wants to take the nuclear arsenal back up from 4,000 weapons to 32,000 weapons. 32,000 weapons. Back when, Reagan was president, that's what we had. He has treaty obligations. He has budget constraints. He can't do it, but that's what he wants. He wants 32,000 nuclear weapons. Like 4,000 nukes isn't enough. I don't know. He is dumb. I mean, he might have the potential to learn things, but he's not intellectually curious and he doesn't care about what's true. So, what are you going to do, right? Make sure he doesn't get elected next time. We're at 84 minutes and 49 seconds, so 10 seconds ago, I'm going to bid adieu, and I don't know French, but I'm going to say that anyway. And adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, all those things. Have a good night. Thank you again for joining me.